BBC News. The latest headlines this hour. Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has appeared in court. He's under investigation over claims his election campaign was funded illegally. Israel has held funerals for the 3 teenagers abducted and killed in the West Bank. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has called their killers heinous murderers. Well, more now on that situation in Israel. We can speak to Alan Goldsmith. He's a scholar at the Foreign Policy Initiative. He's in Washington now. Thanks very much for your time. I guess, sadly, we can dispense with any questions about the peace process because there is no peace process. But what do you think are the likely consequences of all this?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid that your audio is cutting out quite a bit on my end.
I was just saying we probably won't waste much time talking about any impact on the peace process because really, in practical terms, there isn't one. But what do you think are the consequences, the likely consequences of these deaths?
As you said, there isn't really much of a peace process going on right now, so I'm not sure what those impacts will be. I think it's important, though, to view the killings of these 3 Israeli teenagers in its broader context. It's not an isolated criminal act, but rather part of an ongoing war by Hamas and other violent Palestinian terrorist groups seeking the destruction of the state of Israel. And it's also part of an even broader regional context in which Iran is a longstanding sponsor of Hamas, is seeking to undermine Israel's security and in the long run destroy Israel. And that's something that should be considered as the U.S. and its partners sit down with Iran at the negotiating table this month.
I mean, any death is one death too many, of course. Just logically, though, and practically, it would be odd if Hamas was involved in this, wouldn't it? Given that Hamas is a particularly weak position at the moment, it's lost so much support from Egypt, that you'd have thought the last thing it wanted was a major confrontation with Israel.
I really couldn't speculate as to Hamas's motives. I've seen reports that Hamas may be seeking to bolster its bona fides with certain elements among the Palestinians as a resistance, quote unquote, organization. It could be that this was done by, parts or elements within Hamas rather than authorized by the central leadership. That hasn't become clear yet. What is important to know is that Hamas, these suspected murderers have long-standing involvement with Hamas. So if Hamas does not seek to be held accountable for the actions of its members or affiliates or instrumentalities, it has to disassociate from them and denounce what they've done rather than applauding the kidnappings which they've done. And they also have to help bring these individuals to justice.
I mean, clearly,
I'm sure that...
clearly these are tragedies. Nobody would dispute that. And yet, as Hanan Ashrawi pointed out in our report, 10 Palestinians were killed in the past 2 weeks, children among them. Why in the politics of all this do they seem to matter less in this equation?
I'm very sorry. I heard every other word of that, so I didn't catch the question.
In the past 2 weeks, 10 Palestinians were killed, children among them. In the politics of all this, they're all tragedies. Why do those deaths seem to matter less?
The deaths of any innocents matter, and I don't think it's a matter of one mattering more or less than another. They come in different contexts. The deaths of the Palestinian youths in question, some of them, I believe, reportedly were throwing grenades or engaging in other acts of violence against Israelis. That's an entirely different context from the kidnapping and murder of 3 teenagers hitchhiking home from their school. I'd have to look at each individual instance, but I find it weird to compare deaths. One doesn't undo the other. One doesn't legitimize the other or delegitimize the other. But I'm certainly, I think that, if it was possible to accuse Israel of kidnapping and murdering 3 Palestinian children, I can assure you that many Palestinians and others around the world would have laid that accusation by now. So I'm not really sure what the comparison is.
Absolutely. Understood. Forgive me, the audio is so difficult. I know you're having trouble hearing us. We'll cut it short there, but thank you very much indeed.